Okay, well, welcome everyone to our second roundtable. And this is really exciting. I hope that we develop um, a lot of these videos each month and develop a real story, a real full, rich story. So thank you for joining me here. The first video, has our backgrounds and introductions, so we can just jump right in, I think, this time to discussing. And our question that we want to all ask each other is, what revelations have come to us about the womb that has changed our life? So we're each going to talk about one or two. And so I just wanted to mention again briefly what my kind of urgency was. I felt why I felt moved to create this, and for me, I feel it's because the womb is the primary resting place of the soul energy, the cosmic soul energy. That's a whole other video. And we also, apparently, according to a lot of traditions, carry 10 times more soul energies than men. So it is no wonder that we've been the target of the controlling forces to cut us off from, our knowledge of the womb and the power that it has to ensoul the world and more. Yeah, I think that's keeping us compliant, and especially with what's going on today, with the advanced AI and the vaccines, and it's making us more and more almost like robotic, and that's like we want to get busy well, I guess, is there anything that you feel you'd like to add first about that? Do you feel that do you feel that that's an important issue to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always felt, that we're really souls, come here to be temporarily in this physical body. It's really important to remember, people talk about seeing 11:11 on the clocks and whatnot. To me, I always have to tell them that's really a kind of a soul reminder, what are you doing? What did you come here to do? So it's very important that we keep bringing this forward, especially as we're going into a lot of astrologers are talking about this mini age of Aquarius, which is an air sign, and that the planets, these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are going to be in these air signs for the next 200 years. And even though Aquarius is all about bringing down, it's actually the water bearer, bringing down water, which represents consciousness, actually, originally, not mind stuff, consciousness, higher consciousness, from the stars into the earth, through the heart chakra into the earth. So, and it's not just all about robots and, AI and all that stuff. So I think we have to remember that there's always this dual nature to it. But yes, for sure, we have to remember the soul, not get detached from it, not go into this transhuman thing that they're trying to push on people.
Yeah.
What do you mean by transhuman? What does that
it's a whole movement. People who want to get wired up, Elon Musk has got this thing where you just wire up, so you'll suddenly, boom, you're attached to the internet, you're attached to the smartest computers in the world, everything.
Oh.
Right? So a lot of people are going to want that. You're going to start to feel like, wow, I've got superpowers. I can just tap right into the memory banks of every computer, every knowledge base in the world. People will think that's great, or they want to have, replicate all your organs. They can do all that with 3D printing, and they can produce a heart, they can produce organs, they can produce all kinds of things, and that's only going to go exponentially faster in the next 40 years or so. So people are going to want to be bionic, they're going to want to live forever, they want to increase their lifespans through things like that, right?
Wow.
They're all trying to be immortal, immortal in the physical sense, because they're out of touch with the spiritual sense that you're immortal.
Mm-hmm. Be immortal without the womb. And that's exactly what I'm saying, Tara, is that it just feels really urgent that we have to really connect to our wombs at this time, because why have we been shut off from them? Because of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to add that, and this might not be the right round table to be talking about this, but
Okay.
um, yeah, women have been, disconnected from their power, which is their womb and all these other aspects of intuition and feminine knowing and all this sort of thing. But I also feel like men have been like circumcision is a pretty brutal thing for most men. We forget that men have been cut off from their sexual sensitivity, and it was to make them warriors, better warriors, less sensitive. And
Really?
so, yeah, this is what I just found out. And in particularly in Judaism, I think
Mhm.
that was the initial reasoning. I may be wrong. I just
Okay,
heard
so
this
there
recently.
is a book about this that I read years ago called it's by a guy named Carlos Suarez, and he said that the reason they did circumcision is to cut men off from their sexual energy at 8 days old, so it drives their sexual energy into the mind. That's why Jewish people are so intellectual. But it also, then he said, but it also cuts off the Jewish women because
Exactly.
their men are in their heads. So I mean, this is probably not the place to talk about this, but yes, you have a point there
Well,
too.
it's
It's
just
just another factor.
yeah, it feels like there's this patriarchal energy that's responsible. It's not men, it's this
Right, patriarchy.
patriarchal, whatever it is. There's this sort of negative force that has been
Mhm.
doing things to, and I heard that women don't have orgasms as easily when men are circumcised. So it's impacted women's.
I don't know about that.
I do. No,
Okay.
I believe that. Trust me.
Okay.
Anyway, it's just fascinating. And I only bring that in because I wanted to separate, be more clear in, just we're not saying that it's men haven't suffered either through this,
Okay.
right? This patriarchal,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And can I add then about concerning the soul then that um, the qualities of the soul, like we in soul, because we carry more ensoulment and because we're more magnetic because of this whole creation and birthing we have, we really ensoul the community. The men carry more spiritual, the women carry more soulful. So um, that's why I'm saying that we ensoul the children, the men, the community as well. So it's not just about us.
Right.
But,
Right. Yeah.
can
Yeah.
I mention too then at this point what I learned from in the Andean about the soul qualities, which I think are important to list because they're obviously what's missing in the world today, like the will, uh,
Mhm.
the the anchoring in of creations, the depth, and the feeling, pure feeling, not the emotions, but the impersonal kind of, not the impersonal emotions that are like the entanglement and trauma and stuff, but pure feeling. Um, and then what else? And then of course wisdom is the big one, but that whole tenacity, inner strength, those are all the soul qualities, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and
And
Sophia is the goddess of wisdom, so when you say wisdom, in the Western tradition, that's Sophia.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of things that are created today, we all see, are just kind of they don't have staying power. They
Mm.
just kind of quickly frizzle out, or they're very superficial. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that's lack of soul.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I'm digesting. I'm still digesting the soul, the
Digest.
ensoulment.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah.
so thank you for always bringing it back, you know.
Mm.
Apparently, what I need to learn more about, there's a big difference between cosmic soul and personal soul. And apparently, the womb is what's holding the cosmic soul.
Mm.
Like Sophia is totally um, divine and untainted with karma and
Right.
So since we're talking about the Jewish tradition here, in the Jewish tradition, God has two sides. He has a masculine and feminine side. Then there's the part where it's the unknowable. But the Shekinah and she descends to earth because she watches over the children. So she would represent like the cosmic soul that comes to earth actually on the Jewish Sabbath, which is from Friday night at sundown until Saturday night at sundown, when you're not supposed to do anything else except really kind of be soulful. And Orthodox Jewish people have sex on those nights, and it's a big celebration, and they celebrate the feminine form of God every Friday night. But that's not something that most ordinary Reformed or conservative Jewish people know about. So there is actually a very honoring of that divine feminine aspect of God, and she's very close. She refused to kind of go away and leave her children. You know what I mean? It's like very much like she is the divine mother, or an aspect. All religions see it in different ways. So if we're talking about the Andean, I'm just saying, well, it's actually very similar to this Shekinah, the embodiment of that in the Jewish tradition as well. Or, I was thinking about Stella Maris. We're talking about the womb. We were talking about this story, Helen, which I hope you'll talk about. So the womb, the sea, that we come from the womb in this salty inner world. We are, oceanic kind of beings. So the soul has something to do with the ocean, and seaweed and all of that. We were talking about the different stories from the Inuit, and Mary is Stella Maris, the star of the sea, and the five-pointed star, which is always related to Venus. So I think all of these things are all there. They've just all been subverted or submerged, or people have lost the sense of what the symbols mean.
right.
Even a Starbucks symbol. There you go.
Yeah,
That split-pointed mermaid tail. That's like she's opening her uterus. She's opening her vulva. It's very sexual. I mean, that's why Starbucks is so popular. That's an unconscious symbol, and whether they chose that consciously or not, I don't know. I always looked at them and went, gee, that's a pretty intense symbol that they're using there, No wonder they got so popular.
I would like to say I do think that it is conscious,
right?
And that a lot of the symbols that we see and are around us are very consciously thought out, and a lot of them are sexual symbols to get us, to consciously speak to us and to purchase their products. And again, this is misuse of symbolism, and
sacred symbols.
It's misuse of sacred symbols for commerce, and I think that is a huge problem that we're facing now. And as we reconnect back to our wombs and back to the real system, we'll we won't be as susceptible to that type of subversive manipulation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That Starbucks symbol. Wow, that was powerful to me too when I first saw it. Yeah.
I actually even think Canadian Tire is the red inverted triangle with a leaf on it. I mean, when you start, yeah,
the big V for the vagina, that one.
Yeah. So when you start to look at symbolism, it's unbelievable how we're bombarded with all these symbols. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That was a good one, Darlene.
That's good. Oh no, Tim Hortons. I mean, I can't remember what their symbol. Oh, it's a donut, right? So there you go. There's the cervix. It's right there. It's all right there. That's the whole point. It's all right in front of us, but we've forgotten what it means, or we just don't really you can flip it, to go, wow, there's another reminder of that sacred.
And sacred symbolism was to teach us and to get us more connected to our soul. And now it's getting us to spend money and to buy into the fake system. So that's how it's all, all being used against us instead of to, help us reconnect to our soul. So I think that the work that we're doing now. Yeah.
But I think if you're aware and you turn it around, you know what I mean? So they're trying to propagandize you into one thing, you know, and but if you go, well, I really know what that's about, so you can't, you know, fool me, kind of, you know, you're trying to make this profane, you know,
Exactly.
because they exist, they coexist, right? But you just don't want to get caught. That's the devil, right? You don't want to get caught in the literal material, you know, meaning of that. You want to understand the esoteric meaning.
Mhm. But that's exactly what is the agenda, is to entrap us in this fake reality, and
Right.
reconnecting to our wombs is a way to not be caught and entrapped in this system. So
Yeah.
I think that the work that we're doing is very important, and to get us out of this and to become more aware of what's going on. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize that this is going on. It is an agenda, and as we counteract it and get more connected to our wombs and to the earth that we live on, the less susceptible we will be to manipulation. So I think that is really important. And most people, unfortunately, are now being manipulated. And that is why we're seeing all this craziness on the planet right now. We are being manipulated. I mean, this is a huge psyops. And to try and talk to people about it, it's almost impossible. But if people were more connected to their wombs and to, you know, to their soul, this would not be happening. You know, it would
I
be,
agree.
we would be laughing at this and going, you know, no, just no. It would be a simple no, and that's all.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I think that people are more aware. I mean, even I'm on Instagram a lot, and I know Michelle is, and Maureen is, and you know, I don't know about the rest of you, but there's so many different womb groups. I keep, the minute I find one, I send it to Maureen or I send it to Michelle, and I go, wow, here's somebody else. You know, some of them are more, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not, you know, some of them seem to be more serious or more deep about it than others, but they're still all going in that direction. They still understand that they're trying to embrace the womb. And I think, you know, people are also more awake. I think that's why there's so much panic going on in the world, because they realize, oh my God, this internet thing, everybody gets all the information, and you know, there's millions of people who are way more awake than there was 10 years ago. You know, so, but anyway, all right, so the womb.
Okay, so can I start with my, what turned to be 360? So for me, so I'm going to attempt to kind of condense down the blood masteries that I learned from the Andes. And so I guess the first thing that came to me, that how we are, the fact that I feel we haven't always shed our blood. We haven't always shed it outwardly. And because after all, if it is so precious, why are we losing it? So the luminous structure meditation that I have been looking at for 10 years, I believe it might be a process of that process of redirecting the blood to the heart so that it's bursting us into enlightenment or super consciousness. And in that way, we're not going to be losing it outwardly. We're going to be using it for our, if it's so got so much divine content in it, that it's right there for us to access if we can learn this process. And perhaps the luminous structure is one of them. And I'm sure perhaps there's others, out there. And I was going to use again the example of Alma, contemporary, as a contemporary saint, that it is said that she stopped bleeding very young, or there were just a couple of years it was very light and then non-existent, and that would point to that. And it would also point to the fact that we didn't always have a lot of children either. And that's only come, of course, as we know, with the patriarch wanting armies. So the other thing that it brought me to is that it's as if then we have two systems of blood in our bodies. And this is where it got a little overwhelming for me that if the womb is so untainted and divine, that means apparently that it imbues the blood in the womb. So that a few people, and Karen, that's why I was hoping she was going to be here, because she also helped me understand that the trauma surrounding the womb that we have to cleanse and heal, but the womb itself is always pure. Because I was thinking, well, how can, for example, a very abused drug addict give birth to a glowing, miraculously perfect baby? There's something there that the womb itself is already perfect. And again, I think we talked before about the cervix being like the protector. I think Helen was talking about that. So that's a few things there. Why don't I just pass it on to somebody else now, and maybe we can pick up again on that or add to it. Does anyone else want to share what they are smitten about?
Sure, I'd like to share a little bit about that. As you were saying about the cervix as the protector, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure because the little light wasn't on. So in my experience, it's not cervix, it's also eyes of the womb. When I say the gateways of the womb, I'm actually talking about the yoni, because that's what they are to me. So it's cleansing these gateways, like the first gateway, the second gateway. And something really amazing I just became aware of is the Atlas Major. And I became aware of this just working with it with myself. And then I did some research and I realized that the Atlas Major is mostly out of alignment in most people. So when the Shakti wants to travel down, or the energy wants to travel down, most people, we have blocks. And so those, it's layered blocks. When I mean, there's a block with the energy traveling down. And then when we get to the yoni in the first gate, many women have blocks there, I find, it myself included, from what we've let into our life, from what we've let out of our life. Am I making sense? I'm kind of like, I think I am making sense. Am I making sense?
So what is this? What is the Atlas?
So it's at the back of the spine. It will be the vertebrae, the first vertebrae at the top of the spine, right? Mm-hmm. So it would be like, if the spine isn't totally aligned, then we can't have that flow of energy, which is really a descendance into the womb. And you know that I was reading, one of the side effects is that people are afraid of darkness. Mm-hmm. And that was really what stood out to me. I was like, wow. And they have an over infatuation with the light. So it's like all this light and light and light, where and it's all because this is out of alignment. So all this connects down into the yoni, in which, from the yoni traveling up to the womb, it's all that circuit of energy. It can be called the Shakti circuit, or the cheese. I'm sure there's many, many, many names for it, but just to kind of elaborate on what Maureen was saying about the protection and the womb being this incredibly divine space, but what surrounds it is what I feel that we as women have to work at to be able to connect. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to mention something, because I've been on Instagram, I'm fascinated with watching all these videos of these orgasmic births, and because I chose to have both my children at home, even anyway, I remember when my daughter was born, they said, you should have a chiropractor come and adjust her, because just by being born, the head or the spine is, gets so compressed, even though the babies are totally flexible, just to make sure they're in alignment. But that could be something that happens like even naturally. Like I had both my children at home naturally, you know. But if they're born in a hospital, you know, and especially if the mother's induced or anything, they're born in these brilliant lights. And I remember when my son was born and he had a bit of trouble, they said, we got to turn down all the lights. It should be dark, you know, it should be really warm. Like you're not supposed to be born into this blinding bright room like you would be in a hospital room. And, you know, most people are, you know, so right away there's a kind of maybe natural instinctual thing is there that shuts down. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so unnatural to be born, do you know what I mean, in that kind of circumstance where you would normally be born in a cave or a dark place or the Moon Lodge or wherever a birthing place, you know what I mean, would be dark and cozy and, you know, just to, you know, on a very physical level, that's probably gone on for a long time.
I actually just read that
Okay.
happens. It's wonderful that you
Okay.
brought that up.
Okay.
That happens when most people are born.
Yeah.
That this actually goes out and it actually causes that. So
Right. Okay.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
In the mother and the baby?
No, the baby.
No, the baby.
The baby. Mm-hmm.
But I have to say that when I had my son, I broke the last vertebrae in my tailbone. And I could never do any of these exercises where I had to lean on my back after that. It took a long time and I didn't want to go through some really elaborate adjusting. I just went, no, forget it. It'll be okay. But, you know, birth itself also throws women out of alignment. You know, I mean, naturally, I think it would come back, but not always, you know.
There's so much that throws us out of alignment as women.
Mm-hmm.
Like even from that and even birth control, it's so layered.
Mm.
And like exactly what Maureen was saying, the womb being this divine place, but we have to do these steps, I think, to heal that, to come to that place. Mm-hmm.
I would think that's where that yoni steaming would really help. And,
I agree.
you know, using these eggs, you know, and all of those ancient traditions, like.
Yeah, and movement, you know.
Absolutely.
Fluid movement through the spine helps. You can become your own chiropractor when you start to access your own fluid system.
Yeah, and people always danced, you know, that was a natural thing, dancing and drumming. And you know, these are all ancient things that people did all the time. And it did keep them in balance.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Yeah.
But definitely now with the masking and everything, it's another, like I think we spoke about that last time about the masking and was it the yoni connected with the mouth and that too, and the throat chakra and
Yeah. Yeah, I notice I just can't get used to that damn mask. I mean, it just drives me insane. And I was working with somebody who is compromised, and I was spending quite a, you know, several, like a day with her, and I just kept coming off and on, and I was like, I can't stand this thing. I don't care. I don't know how doctors wear them, you know, since surgery. And I mean, they've been wearing them for years. But I just find it so unbalancing, completely, like it blocks my vision. And then, you know, it just throws me off completely. And then people say, what's the big deal? Can't wear a mask, you know? And I'm like, no, I can't. Just can't wear it. And it just reminds me of what you were saying, Darlene. It's like we can get manipulated into thinking that it's a good thing and then not trust our own intuitive connection to the mask and what it's doing to our whole, it is actually messing with our whole equilibrium and how we think and feel and perceive and you know.
Well, that is the agenda as well, to get us to think not in our own best benefits, but so I think that is a huge problem too, that we're being taught by the government, for lack of a better word, of how to think, how to feel, what to do. I mean, right now we don't even know whether we're sick or not, completely disconnected from our bodies. We have to turn on the TV or ask a government official or expert how we are feeling and what we have to do to make ourselves feel better. So again, I think this is really important work as we reconnect back to ourselves and back to our own innate wisdom and knowledge that, you know, has been keeping us healthy for centuries. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to mention one thing. I think before we talked about that there was this grid that I think women need to get together and meditate with their wombs and very much connected to the earth, I feel. You know, whether you're bleeding or not. I mean, we're all, I believe, menopausal, are we not here in this group? Michelle, are you still
Oh yeah,
bleeding?
menopausal.
You're menopausal, okay. So just recirculating that energy, I think we need to discover what that feels like, what that pattern is, you know, what it looks like, you know. I mean, we know it, it's in our DNA. It was because we were in our mothers and our grandmothers, you know, so we know this on some level. And to really work with, you know, again, I think it has to do with the astrology. I think I remember I intuited this before. It has to do with working with eclipses and planetary alignments. I think when you bring in like really powerful energies, because if, like Darlene, you're talking about, you know, this is a big cabal going on here, you need to take some pretty drastic, I would say drastic action, not just urgent action. I would say drastic action here, you know, to counteract it, you know.
It's interesting because, you know, I was preparing for my womb power class. It's happening on Thursday, and it's the 5th of the 5-part vaginal reflexology zone of the vagina, and the last zone is the cervix itself. And it's on Do Not Disturb, but somehow not understanding that. Oh shoot. Okay. Anyway, sorry. And I found out that the woman was talking about the cervix, because it's orgasmic, has a strong bioelectric field. The heart has a strong bioelectric field. You know, in heart math, they talk about all that, you know, and that the blood, because it contains iron, can be charged by electric current. And so they were talking about how you charge the connection between the heart and the cervix, and it will charge the blood. And it's another way of talking about what you were talking about, Maureen, with the Andean meditation. And why am I telling you all this? It relates to something you're talking about. Well, it's a way of, it's one of these other ways, like the Andean, you know, meditating together as a group with the earth, on eclipses. Like, it doesn't, I feel like it doesn't have to just be on powerful days. We have our own, you know, and when we hook it into the Taurus, as Maureen talks about, and we can, you know, do this internally anywhere, anytime, on a, like as a regular practice. Do you know what I mean? We have our own little, we've got it going on inside if we can activate that. So,
you know, when you're saying that, Michelle, I was just saying, and that's how they built the pyramids. You know, they were always saying that, you know, all these magicians levitated all these stones. And I was going to say it was probably a bunch of women, because when you're saying, I'm going, well, you can charge batteries. You don't need solar power. You don't need wind power. You just need a bunch of women, you know, because it's like, it's electric, it's batteries, right? You could just live on womb power, you know.
We are such magnetic forces. Yeah.
yes.
And it's amazing how, as you know, the womb is totally bypassed. And, you know, when these things come up, I go, but, and
it's never mentioned.
Like, even if I pull them, you know, and look in their eyes, like, no, it's big resistance.
Yeah. It's a re-education and retraining that I only started to get into, you know, very recently myself. And I can only imagine, you know, most women don't know about this, you know.
Yeah, or I was just researching, you know, like all of Maria Gimbutas's work, like all of the young archaeologists, they keep dissing all of this stuff. Oh no, that's feminist, sacred priestesses. No, they were just prostitutes. I just read this stuff going, oh, come on, guys. You know, you don't want to, you just think this was some feminist thing that was in the ethers, you know what I mean? It's like, it just means they don't see it as valid. It's like they're going right back into their old entrenched ways.
It's interesting because I just got turned on to the same guy who was talking about the circumcision mentioned this book called Sahara Asia, and how the reason there's all this pedophilia and, sexual repression and violence is because during the, I don't know, 3500 BC to 4000 BC, there was this environmental change on the planet that created the Sahara Desert and reduced a lot of, vegetation and food supply, and it triggered this like scarcity, and people started to sort of fight each other for land and this, that, and the other. And originally, there was an abundance, and mothers cared for their children and nurtured them, and obviously it was very matriarchal. And it was just an interesting point that after that, there was less sensitivity toward child rearing, and it was like this cut off to create probably warriors, this idea of the warrior, the armies. And I just get that feeling of like this cut off, sort of like we were talking about earlier, but the lack of soul. It's like it's been sort of programmed out for other agendas. And I was watching The Crown, and it was like, Diana wanted to nurture her children, whereas, the Queen did not, she created these very cold children to put up with the harshness of the world, a cold world, and Diana's this loving, but very emotional and seen as just the antithesis of anyway, it's getting off a bit, but I just found it very interesting, like this whole theme of really caring about your children, mothering in the truest sense, honoring emotions,
Yeah, that's an interesting theory, because usually, things are organic. It's true that, and somebody was just mentioning, what's coming up, this new age of Aquarius hasn't happened in 4,000 years. So it's synchronous that you're talking about 4,000 years ago. And the Jewish religion actually, really starting around 4,300 years ago. There were in West Africa, they were very wealthy. I was there actually across the Sahara Desert, and they talked about, incredible kingdoms and queendoms and wealth, and it was all irrigated. They were very sophisticated. And then, yeah, it changed, right? So people will respond to any kind of a natural, tradition like that. But obviously they were in very dire situations, and yeah, you would have to fight to protect your food, because otherwise you weren't going to survive. So, but somehow that got entrenched, rather than, we're just responding to some minor thing,
Yeah, there may be more to the theory. I didn't read the whole thing, but.
Okay.
Some African cultures did survive through, and I just watched, got connected in with the South Sudan nomadic tribe that are with their cows, and they're very matriarchal. They're called the Dinka. And what was really intriguing about them is that they all the women live together. The men do not stay overnight unless they have a special place to go. But they never like the men are actually, because they love their cows so much, it's all based around the cows, they sleep in the cow shed.
Right.
And so the women are all together. And they also, this is another thing that Dr. Delbert Blair mentioned about women that didn't bleed, like these, like a lot of African women that were more like the last Amazons. They live off cow milk, and they don't eat the meat of their cows. They never kill their cows. They just drink milk and vegetables, and I think some millet or a grain of some kind. Anyway, what's amazing, like they're so healthy and beautiful, and they're all over 6 feet. Some of them are 7 feet tall.
Wow.
And I would love to know if they bleed outwardly. I'll bet they don't, because they got all the power within. But I'd really like to know what some of you think about this idea that we didn't bleed.
I love that you bring that up, because Dan Poitras talks about that.
Yeah.
And he said that the women who were eating a vegan diet and mostly raw just stopped bleeding eventually.
And also if they were athletic too.
And if they were athletic, yeah. But there's sometimes, you know, you lose your period from stress, but you have to be in a healthy shape to lose it in the right way. As
well, I think there's,
right?
Yeah, there's a lot of women who are vegan these days and eating raw diets. You could just ask them. I mean, it's very trendy these days to do that.
True.
You know,
But
or
it does
if
have
you
to be in conjunction
with being conscious of this. Right. Not just eating a vegan diet, right? Because I would think if you lived in a warm climate where they're eating much more, you know, raw food, but not necessarily eating a lot of meat. I don't know. I would think that, yeah. I would think that that's possible. I mean, you know, the idea that you recirculate your blood. What I was thinking about was this story, and I'm trying to remember where I heard it, that women used to have to go and serve as sacred priestesses in the temples in the Middle East. And you had to serve for a year before you could get married. And that was continued into the Greek and the Roman tradition. And so women were these sacred priestesses. And I'm trying to remember where I originally heard this story, that, you know, men would go to war and they would, you know, have to kill to defend their land, or the women, the children, that's what they were doing. And then they would come back, but they would all be PTSD'd out because, you know, you're not really supposed to kill. I mean, that is the first commandment. Nobody really wants to kill. So before they could be integrated back into society, they had to go to the temples and have sex with these sacred priestesses. Now, this, to me, that blew me away, this story.
Yeah.
And and especially when they were bleeding. And that was actually, the men would have to have sex with the women when they were bleeding, because apparently that's when they were at their most powerful. That was the story I heard.
Okay.
Priestesses. So because they would exchange, now this is like you're saying, they would exchange this profane bloodshed of death for the blood of life. So it's very much like alchemy. And I kept thinking, oh, maybe this is the basis of alchemy, and they're just not really telling you what it's about. But it's like, so to cleanse them, like and the women, now this would prove that the womb would have to be able to absorb and not be touched by this defiled blood of death. You see what I mean? The women would have to be like the goddess, like these hieroglyphs, to take this in and transmute it. That's alchemy, right? It wouldn't bother them, right? They would be on this very high level. And then the men would be able to go back into their culture and act like normal people. And I went, wow, that's like, totally, that blew my mind, right? Hearing that story. And it felt very real to me.
Well, it comes also from the myth, the very first written myth of Gilgamesh. Enkidu, his friend, his wild man friend, could not be civilized until he had slept with this sacred.
Oh, we're losing you.
Okay. Can't hear me?
No, it's okay. There was a bit of interference. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you can't hear?
So, can you hear me now? Yeah, Gilgamesh's wild man friend could not enter civilization until he had slept with a sacred prostitute or a hierodule or a sacred priestess.
You're right, right. Okay.
And so that's a similar theme.
Well, I think that's probably where it comes from.
But the bleeding blood thing, that is amazing. And to think about not having to take on that karma, because I've heard a young woman on YouTube say that she won't sleep with a guy until he's done his ancestral healing. She doesn't want his energy inside of her that hasn't been resolved in that particular, I don't know exactly what she means by ancestral healing, for what kind of process that is, but I just thought that's pretty savvy, you know?
That's a wise idea.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's what my husband and I did when we first got together. And I said, you know, we have to clear up everybody we've ever had sex with. So, and he knew that too. So we wrote down a list. We took days and weeks to go through this, to recall it all. It was like a recapitulation, all the people, write it down, burn it up, just, you know, a whole ritual. We're not bringing any of those people along with us, right? We're going to start fresh, right? So
that's awesome.
To me, that was like, yeah, of course you have to do that, right? Or women, you know, because now I think they say that, you know, sperm will live in a woman's system. So actually you don't even know the child that you have is actually from the man who you think is the father. There's extra DNA in there that stays alive in a woman's system and embeds somehow in the tissues. I went, whoa, like that's pretty freaky.
Well, do you think that these ancient or these goddesses in the temple, that they would be taught, as you said, this alchemy and how to do that? So
Oh, I
maybe
think
that's a
so.
pieces that we are missing now, that they were taught how to transmute
Yes.
all these energies, and now we're just taking them all in, and we have no clue how to work with those energies.
Yeah.
And so that's another important piece, I think, as we do womb work, is that we do learn the alchemy and how
Right.
to, to transmute all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would be healthier, men would be healthier, children would be healthier. So to bring back these practices, I think is something that we could, start to work on.
So maybe that's what they mean by an immaculate conception. You see, it just means
Exactly.
they really cleaned it out there. It
Yes.
has nothing to do with,
Mhm.
what they think. Of course,
Yeah.
you see, they're still kind of telling you some truth there. I still keep thinking that there's always a truth in there somewhere. It's just been twisted,
Yeah, so it doesn't mean virgin or no man. It means that you have transmuted all those energies and you're coming together in a
pure,
better way, in a pure way.
right,
Yeah.
right. But
Well,
like Maureen was saying, the womb,
yeah.
this higher womb is immutable. It can never be tainted or
Yes.
made profane no matter what. And so I think that's a very interesting model, because everybody thinks they have to do all this emotional healing and that the womb has been damaged. Like that's a whole other way of thinking about it, like that it's mainly on the emotional level, not so much the physical
Right.
level.
Yeah. And instead of thinking it's damaged and we have to heal it, that we just have to learn what it is. We have to work with the energies and know what they are. So, and then we're able to use that energy in a better way. It's just becoming aware or conscious. I think that most of the things that we do today, they're unconscious. We don't really know what we're doing. So now I think we're bringing consciousness and intention back into how we walk and what we do in the choices we make. I think that's really important as we take our energy back. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a drawing of how that might look. Can I show you?
Okay,
And it's
yeah.
posted on the page. I don't know, can you?
Okay.
Well, it starts here. There's the womb.
Yeah.
And then we bring it up to the heart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Wow, that's beautiful, Maureen.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she just said this. We were doing these tarot cards, and all of a sudden she said something about. She said the word "sea of love," a sea of love, and I went, "Oh, sea of love! Like if you really let yourself go into that sea of love, that's like the womb. You know what I mean? And let that feeling of being back in the womb, or that oceanic consciousness, or that cleansing, that primal essence, like maybe it's just very simple. Maybe these things are like right there. It's like you have to get the right phrase or the right visualization, and really let yourself permeate it. Like it is the Holy Grail. I always think of the womb as being like the Holy Grail. That's what everybody was seeking. That's just a symbol of it.
Helen, do you feel comfortable to share that story about the seaweed? Do you think that would be helpful with what we're talking about?
If you think so. I never, until Tara said about the seaweed, it's so interesting that I've known that my whole life, especially about the seaweed, but I never made that connection. So the story is that my grandmother was born with leukemia. And at that time, from what I understand, there weren't a lot of resources. So I was told that my great grandmother would take her to the sea every day and wrap her in seaweed. And for many years, I was told that she would go to the local butcher and get blood. But recently, I was told that the blood was from the sisters and from my great grandmother. So the significance of the sea is something I'm processing, as Tara just kind of enlightened me on the symbolicness of wrapping her in the sea. And she would say that came with the seaweed story. And she would say that information came from the Sidhe. So the Sidhe are known as the race of fairies. in ours.
This is
Right?
happening in Ireland.
So, and it's really interesting that they call them the she. You know, I was kind of thinking about that too, right? It's just so lovely that they're the she, so that information came from them. So it's wonderful, and I think about that, and I think, okay, like, what were these women doing? Like, what did they have? They didn't have a lot of resources, so they had to use what was available to them. So I think for them, the connection to the womb was just, it was like even Darlene was saying, or Tara, it was just there, right? It was just there, where they didn't have to really search. And again, we're talking about women that didn't have a lot of outside stuff on them like we do. They didn't have a lot of influence, so they had accessibility to that organic womb, right? But going back to my grandmother, like, she wasn't supposed to live, and the woman died at 81 of leukemia, but lived a full life.
Wow.
So to me, that's incredible.
Wow.
Maybe you can share your insight about the seaweed, because I still really love what you said about that, Tara.
Oh, well, it's just like the seaweed is like the womb, like you're in the womb, and there's the minerals and the richness and all that. And, so that's what she's putting back on her skin, and like putting her back into the ocean, back into the womb. I mean, it's really, probably eating seaweed would probably be a very good thing to do. I mean, it is nutritious, and, in Japan, they eat a lot of seaweed. So when they dropped the atomic bomb, a lot of people were protected because they eat seaweed all the time. And there's probably vitamin K in it, I guess, as well, which is also really good for that. But I love the idea.
Even more powerful. The womb blood itself is
yes, and the womb blood, of course, yeah,
than the seaweed.
Yeah, but probably the combination is a great combination, right? Yeah, we're using womb blood, so probably this was used a lot. And I haven't heard women talking about it, or or anything like that. Like I've heard it being used as for love spells. That if you take a bit of your menstrual blood and you want to make somebody fall in love with you, you'd put the menstrual blood in their drink and you give it to somebody, and and then they're hooked, right? But otherwise, to do healing, I mean, wow, that's like somebody could write a whole grimoire or a manual or whatever about that, like, because people do use what's practical, and they were more in touch.
Powerful.
So Helen,
also,
sorry, I had a question. Is they wrapped her in the blood, or she drank?
No, the seaweed was wrapped.
But she drank their blood? Wow. Wow.
And
that's like a blood transfusion, right? Like,
yeah,
obviously.
Oh my God.
And you think about it and you go, how many other women knew about that?
Yeah.
It wasn't discussed was because of the shame.
Yeah.
Right? Because of a shame with that.
But you see, that was it. See, the women probably, when they were trying to, destroy all the herbalists and the witches by the Catholic Church, this is, midwives and doulas and death doulas. It was because the women knew all this stuff, and they were so powerful. That's why, the word taboo originally meant sacred. That's why they made menstrual blood taboo, because it is incredibly sacred. And that was probably been known for, from the beginning of time. But of course, it's just recently, in the relatively big picture, that it's been squashed like that, So probably people were doing it all the time, drinking menstrual blood.
There's another story that another quick story I wanted to share about the blood. I don't know if any of you do this practice, but it's a practice that I've done is with the blood, is to go out and find a rock with a face on it. Maybe Michelle, you know about this, to find a rock that looks like a face, and then you smear your menstrual blood on it and you put it in the earth face down, and so that the earth will always know your blood and it connects to her blood. So it's just that connection of having her very close to you and protect you. Yeah, just wanted to share that because we're talking about the blood.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And where did you learn that from?
I read that in a book I can't remember where. It was somewhere around when I was taking Tantra. It came to me in a book, or somebody told me at some point, but I really can't remember.
And the story itself, your grandmother was in Ireland, was she?
Oh, yes.
Whereabouts?
Sorry?
Whereabouts in Ireland?
Belfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in Belfast.
So I just wanted to add
but her cottage was outside of Belfast, so she lived in a little cottage. My grandmother was in Belfast. My great grandmother had a cottage outside of Belfast, so it was right by the sea, and she had a little shop there. So that's what she did. She was a kind of a herbal. Well, I guess she kind of did everything that was needed.
Right. So I just want to mention about the ancient myths coming from Ireland, and I have a couple of them that I tell. And you know, the sealskin woman, she's coming out of the sea, she's covered in seaweed, and she's helping the women to ensoul, you know. As you read between the lines, you can see that there's some connection there, I think, about there may be some clues in that story.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Wow.
Because the seals are very present. Well, obviously in Ireland, there's so many, lots of seals. And it's incredible. Wow.
But I would think that would go for the Inuit culture. Maureen, you have a bit of experience with that, or, you know, anybody who's living on the coastline of North America, even the Vikings, you know, I mean, anybody who lives on the sea, you know, on the colder parts of the sea, right? I guess, are there seals in warmer climates? I don't know. I always thought it was kind of a cold.
We have
live in
seals
colder-
in California.
Yeah, you have seals in California. I've seen them actually. That's true.
But still, it's interesting that, like what you're saying, Tara, is that there are two sealskin woman stories that are almost identical, and one is from the Arctic and one is from Ireland. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the Viking myths, which I don't know that much about, there's probably stuff there as well, you know, or Iceland or Greenland, but I don't know that much about that, or Estonia. I have a friend who knows Estonia, and I should ask her. She collecting all those stories. But it makes me think also back to Ireland about those Sheelana gigs, you know, on the churches, like, you know, they've got those big yonis there, and, you know, people have always speculated, what's that all about, you know?
Oh yeah, I know the author of a woman who wrote a whole book about the Sheelana gigs. She lives in LA. It's a great book.
Are we frozen? I have magic, you know. No,
I think
we're okay.
I don't know if any of you know about the womb caves. I know Maureen knows about the womb caves in Ireland, like the Cave of the Morgan.
No, please share.
Well, it's because they have in what's we have many. There's many of them in different cultures. These womb caves, but the Sheelana gigs are a very common thing. Like they're all over Ireland, and I don't really.
Is it right?
Really little, right?
So what did people say they were?
You know what? I
mean,
never really asked. It's really funny.
It's funny.
I just thought
just kind of didn't see it.
I didn't until I got older and got into this. I didn't understand what it was, you know, because they're not as pronounced as they are in pictures, right? So it would almost look like a circle holding, you know. But I think that I'm not even sure. Like maybe we thought it was something with the fairies or something like that.
Okay.
You know?
Right. So this womb cave, it's supposed to be Morgan's cave, like Morgan Le Fay. Okay. And what's the significance of the cave? What's the lore around it? Did people go there to do ceremonies or to connect with the Fae?
There to connect to the womb. That's where Maureen was in Ireland, in West Ireland. I know that you might have gone there, Maureen. I wasn't sure if you visited the cave, if you visited the caves or anything like that.
Are they like Sardinia? Are they like the Sardinian womb caves?
Yes, same thing, right? It's to say everywhere. I'm sure that there's even some in Ontario, Canada, where, you know. Yeah.
Well, as soon as you find them, let me know.
Well, we just went to that Coolin in Elora, and Elora is a really popular, well-known space, and I just went there for the first time. It's really beautiful. It's really obvious, the structure there. We didn't go right up to it, but you can see it. It's and a very magical energy there. I went, wow, this feels really incredible.
I wonder if there's any artifacts in there.
There might be, I don't know. We'd have to, I'm sure you can probably look around on the internet, or people who live up near there would be able to tell you as well. You know, it's really quite beautiful, for sure.
I wanted to ask Helen, when we were talking about, you know, protecting like those gates, when you clear those gates, that's a form of the whole yoni, not just the cervix, being able to protect what gets let in. Are we frozen again? Sorry, Mike.
It's okay. No, you're back. Okay. So being able to protect, I'm sorry.
Well, remember we were talking about women being able to know what can be let in and what can't be let in.
And that's not also a sexual thing, right? Like that's more of a, like even outside of like, what have we accepted? Same with what Darlene was saying. What are we accepting with this agenda? What are we bringing in? What are we allowing to be in? Because the first gate is an entrance point for us, right? So, you know, we can look at that and say, do I want this? You know, and there's also different ways that I find in my practice to ground. And I'll do a lot of anus breathing now and ground through that really into root chakra. I find that I'm really having to ground myself. And there's a lot going on in my world, but really having to ground myself so much. And I sometimes think it's from what's going on at all. So I've been working a lot with the anus as well and grounding. And yeah,
awesome.
Not to go off topic. Yeah.
So this would be kind of like a way of judging, you know, through the cervix, you know, like even because we're used to always thinking it's coming through our heads, right? Rather than the yoni first, you know, like to, is this something, right? We're just not used to thinking about it like that.
Yeah.
Can you mention more about
in my practice? I would, up until recently, so my practice is very organic. What I mean is it can, it's fluid because I'm learning in this practice. So it used to be that I would ground down from the anus, so from that through the first gate into the earth, and then there would be a pulling. But recently I was told no, that I had to focus here at the atlas major, and I had to bring it down through the back, right, and down into the yoni. And when I came to the first gate, then I ground, pull up, but the descension came down the back. I'm learning in this, so I'm playing in this, but it seems to be how it's growing organically within me. So, and I'm allowing space for this organic growth to happen with this work. And that is the one thing I'm learning and being sure here. As far as it can be what it is what it is in the, that makes sense. Yeah.
Does everyone feel they shared what their 360 was when they first heard something about the womb? No?
I think there's so much, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, does anybody?
We're getting all polite and Canadian right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was, for me, it was that story about, you know, that women had the power to transmute that kind of, you know, blood, that war, that residue, you know, and be okay, you know what I mean? And kind of use that energy to me. It's like, whoa, okay, it was like really powerful and made a lot of sense to me. And that is that sense that the womb is a
Yeah, and I guess the big one for me that I started out saying was that the cosmic soul too.
Right.
So this,
Right.
so it's kind of up to us to ground that.
Yeah, I remember when I was pregnant, readings for people who are trying to get pregnant, I say to them, having a child, this is a spiritual thing. You're bringing a soul from the ethers. You and your partner need to be really clear about what it is you want to bring in here, and then this soul kind of comes into your womb. It's like it appears in there. It is that landing place. So I always kind of talked about it like that, but to really understand, wow, it's true. That's the only place that a soul can land. That's a pretty special place then, and people kind of take it for granted, like, oh yeah, like, they think about it as a very sexual, or just the scientific, or they've lost that sense of that women carry this holy, it's the holy of holies, that's how they talk about it, that's the most sacred place. That's the ark, it's like the
And
womb,
and also that's what brings us to enlightenment.
Right.
Yeah, more of our focus is on focusing here. And we're taught that, focus here, meditation.
Right.
But
Yeah,
really,
and go out the top of your,
yeah, go
it's the ascension.
It's
Right?
crazy. It's like,
Yeah. Well, that's the masculine, like, Maureen was saying, the masculine wants to go up to the soul, or the cosmic feminine, which I always think, when I went to years ago, it was actually sitting inside a pyramid with this drawing of this, who's the Milky Way. She's like everything. She's the whole universe. And you realize the whole universe is a big cosmic yoni. Like, we're in this cosmic womb, I'm using the words yoni and womb interchangeably, but but it's also as above, so below. So every woman has this, mini, excuse me, cosmic universe womb inside them, like, wow, get in there, like, you don't have to go out there. It's all inside. So you go from the inside out, but there's no splitting off. There's nowhere to go. They talk about that in the Buddhist tradition, but when you see it from a feminine perspective, it makes even more sense. You're not out. You don't need to go anywhere. You need to go within.
And the other thing, I think that people seem to always think that it's Father Sky and Mother Earth, and I think we've got to get over that one too, because Nuit, is that how you say it? Nuit is the cosmic mother, the cosmic void, the Viracocha, and the Earth is one of her tiny little children. Thousands of children. So the Father Sky, to me, really is just the atmosphere around the Earth. Was that how you see it?
Well, I think Father Sky, I think they usually mean the sun. They always put the sun as the main, because the sun is the source of light, right?
So the solar system, but
it's bigger. The sun is just one little tiny star. I was just looking yesterday, the eclipse that happened, the sun is on this star called Antares. Well, Antares is like this big, and our sun is like that big. So our sun is just this little tiny pipsqueak as well, star in the great big story. It's just it's relative to where we are. But yeah, I think that sky god that's above. You see, that's that whole patriarchal, the masculine is above the feminine, right? That's a whole domination kind of model, right?
Right.
As well. Or it's been turned that way,
I wanted to say that the thing that really, the yoni steaming was a physical, womb awakening, but it was when I reconnected with Marguerite's work and Maureen talking about, women being parthenogenic, having that power, that really blew, because I knew about it intellectually, but then when I revisited it and talked to you, Maureen, in person about it, I was like, what? That blew my doors open. That was like, all right, if this is true, then game on, because then from then on, everything opened up. Like, I was like, what else don't I know about? That's the biggest gloss over ever, Virgin Mary. Oh, I used to just think, oh yeah. And then all these myths where the woman just births the world. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That means something. That means incredible power. And I was like, now, you know what I mean? That just has blown everything open for me. So I just wanted to, we're taking that for granted, I think. I think you all agree. But it has to be stated.
It's becoming almost normalized for us.
Right? Not that any of us have done it, but you know, we accept it as normal.
The other thing that really that the Parthenon was the temple.
Yeah, we kind of went, it's
then,
like, it's all right there.
Honored it, and how front and center it was, and how men were totally accepting of this.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with Ganesh. Just birth. I mean, he's so popular, you know, and nobody really, you know, speaks about the fact that that's a parthenogenesis birth, like, you know, so.
There's so much of it. It's like, that's, what's that quote? There's that quote, if you really want to hide something from people, just put it out in front, put it out there right in front of everyone, and it'll be hidden. You know, I'm not quoting it very well.
You know, maybe they're obscure, the little Sheila gigs are not like these big normal things, right? But the Virgin Mary birth is obvious. Like, that's like, I don't know how many billion, you know, and the billion people don't get it, you know, or everybody that goes to Greece to visit the Parthenon, it's like, you know, I've been there, it's like, you can't miss it. It's the center, ancient, the whole West civilization is based on this culture, parthenogenesis, you know, Athena, you know, it's like right there, like, you know. So it shouldn't be hard to reconnect these, you know, these things for people to get it, you know.
No, it is hard. It's a big deal, unfortunately. I think we can start to make it more normalized, but I have to say, whenever I talk about it, people are kind of like, no, I can't really go there. And as was I, when I first read Marguerite's, you know, PhD, I was kind of like, wow, this is fascinating. She's got all this information backing it up, but did I grasp onto it? No, it took me 10 years to go back and have it, you know, come at me through Maureen. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't fully take it on, even though I was into feminism and women's spirituality and made a documentary about the first known writer who was a high priestess from Mesopotamia. I mean, it was all about that. And I still kind of went like that, you know? So I'm just saying.
So what is that resistance, you know, because, you know, Michelle, I've always believed that, you know, like, you know, if you're interested in that culture, you know, it's because you were there, you know, you were definitely a high priestess back there, you know. And everybody has these memories, you know, they've all been somewhere in the past, but what is the resistance? You know, why are people so afraid to look at it or remember it, or what does it make you feel? What is there, if you say, oh, wow, women can, not that we're excluding men or anything, not that we don't need to have that sacred balance, we definitely do, but that women, I mean, can do this physically or even metaphorically or spiritually, do you know what I mean? Because it's not about giving birth to babies, and I think that's a very important point, especially these days when a lot of young people don't want to bring babies into the world because of overpopulation or whatever. It's just, that's the source, you know, for all creativity. Like one of my favorite artists, Judy Chicago, you know, she never had physical children because she said, I was going to take all my creativity and make real art with it, you know, and she's influenced, you know, millions of people, and she's, thank God, you know, she's had a big resurgence now from the dinner party, and she's in her 80s and she's still going like crazy making all this great art. So, you know, I think she got it, you know, she made that dinner party, all these beautiful, incredible plates to all these goddesses. I mean, it was an incredible monument, a triangular table. And so, you know, she's a perfect example, you know, of, yes, you just use that creativity to bring creations into the world. You know, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
She's like the model for the Magdalene, or here in Tyndonega, the Jigonsase, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They use their creativity for being great teachers.
Yeah.
Okay. I also I wanted to hear Darlene's big thing though.
my big thing?
Yeah, what's
Mhm.
your big
Well,
womb thing?
Oh, I think I shared that last week when I went into the pyramid. And I think that was very much a womb space and awakening. And after going into a space like that and reconnecting to um, my creativity or whatever, but I'm thinking about creativity is in the world we are in today, creativity is not encouraged. It's more like we are now being told what to do instead of, so I think now, and the way we're speaking, like the way we're talking, is most people are not speaking the way that we're speaking. So I think that that's really going to be inspirational to other people to hear us talk about these things and talk about things that you don't hear people on the street talking about these topics. So I think I think that's really important that we're doing this and opening up the dialogue and getting people to reconnect back to the creativity. And as you say, when we get together, we start to think of different things and it all comes together. And I prefer this than listening to mainstream media. My God, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of, how do we go? Speaking about ensouling ourselves, we've mentioned lots of ways through creativity, and I just have like a small list here of the meaning of color, and this is from Rudolf Steiner, who's like, he's talking here about ensoulment through color, and he says that if you like went into a room that was all one color and then moved into another complementary room, you can feel a shift in your feeling, which is like a shift of soul, of your soulfulness. So you can really tune in and get a sense, like tangibly through color. So for example, he says, like on the cool colors, he said, are the colors behind the light. So turquoise, cobalt, indigo, and violet. And then the colors in front of the light are like lime green, yellow, and orange. And if I can just read you, for example, cobalt is an opaque color moving toward the light and holding the will of the sacred darkness. It's just so beautiful, so poetic.
Well, for our next round table, we obviously have talked of a lot of things. So Helen, when we come back to our next round table, is going to lead us through what this practice is so that we do learn how to realign our spine. So I'll turn it over to Helen and she can give a little bit of an intro of what we will be doing in our next meeting together.
Thanks, Darlene.
Okay.
So in our next meeting together, we're going to be focusing on the breath and the spine and grounding deep into Mother Earth so that we can begin to work through the first gate. So that will be our next practice, and I hope you'll all join us because it's very, very important for all of us as women to get grounded at the minute into the earth. So
Excellent.
thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Can't wait.
Thank you so much. I hope that we're going to meet again in January.
So
Thank you, everybody.
thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Look
you,
forward to
everyone.
hearing your comments.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, please leave your comments.